Hey guys, we're gonna wait like a couple more minutes until like 5:35 to see if anyone else joins. Okay. I'm gonna assume this is everyone that's gonna join. So we're going to start. I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. So if you remember last week, we ended with a few challenge exercises using mainly loops and if statements. So was anyone here not here last week? Okay. I'm assuming everyone's already knows how to do these, so I'm gonna quickly go over the solutions. So, well, these are possible solutions. There's many other solutions you could have written, but this is what I came up with. So first, it was you had to write a program that asks for a number until the user inputs an odd number. So for this, you'd use the while loop. Usually you'd use a while loop when you don't know how many times you have to loop for. So I just put while true. This creates an infinite loop, which is not really that good, but it works for this specific problem. I set variable x to an input, enter a number, and then I cast this variable as an integer because it starts off as a string and you have to turn it into an integer. And then I have an if statement, and using the modulo operator, this checks for if it's odd. So if x modulo 2 equals 1, then that means it's an odd number. So I'll print out you entered an odd number, and then I use the break keyword, which basically just exits out of the entire loop. So if I run this, I could do like keep going until I enter an odd number, and then it'll stop. Next challenge exercise was to print the first 10 positive even numbers, like without just listing them, using a loop basically. So the solution is very simple for this. I made a variable x, set it equal to 2 because that's where you're starting, and then while x is less than or equal to 20, x equals x plus 2, so it increases by 2 every time. So it increases by every even number, and then print x. So it's going to print 4, 6. We actually start at 0. Yeah, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, all the way to 20. The third challenge exercise was, given the cost of the item, let the user keep inputting money until the sum of the money inputted is greater than the cost. So first, I have a variable called cost set to 100, so that's our cost. And then I've printed it says you owe $100. So I have a second variable called paid, which will be the total amount that the user inputs, and it starts off at 0. So we'll have a loop while paid is less than cost. X, another variable, will be set to the input, give money please. And the total paid variable will have x added to it after being converted to integer. So this will keep going until the cost is greater than 100, or the paid is greater than 100. So I start by 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay, what happened? Flip. 3, like 5, 5, and then like 20, 20, and it's going to keep adding these numbers until it becomes greater than 100. And once that happens, it'll exit the loop and say, thank you, good sir. Okay, so this week, we're going to focus on lists, tuples, and arrays with conditionals and loops as well. So there's kind of a lot to cover this class. So I'll start with talking about lists and tuples. So lists and tuples are ways to store multiple pieces of data in one place, and they're referred to as collections. So first, let's talk about lists. Lists and tuples are very similar to each other. One big difference is that a tuple cannot be changed. So once you create a tuple like this, you can't edit the stuff that's inside of it. So a tuple is created by naming the variable. This is just called tuple just for the example. And then you use parentheses. And then inside the parentheses, you put your values. And they can be different values. So it doesn't have to be the same type of variable throughout. So for example, we have an integer, and then we have a string, and then 4 more integers. So you just have to separate each value inside the tuple by a comma, and you can keep going on forever. So with tuples and lists, there's a system of identifying the data inside of it called indices. So each like piece of data inside a tuple or a list has an index, which starts at 0 and it counts up all the way to the end. So the first data value in a tuple or list is always at index 0. The second one will be at index 1. The third one will be at index 2, and then this will be index 3, index 4, index 5, index 6, and index 7. So the way you point out these, like pick out a specific piece of data from a tuple or list is by typing the name of that tuple or list and then typing square bracket and the number index it is. So in this case, tuple 4 will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which corresponds to 3. So if we run this right now, you can see first we print tuple. You can print an entire list or tuple, which will just print out the entire thing, including the parentheses. If we print tuple at index 2, so we see 0, 1, 2. Index 2 will be Epic Gamer, so we'll print this out. You can also use this function called length, abbreviated len. So the way you write it is len, and inside the parentheses you put the list or the tuple. So if we print this function, we get 8 because there's 8 data types in here. I mean, there's 8 pieces of data in here. And you'll notice that the number of indexes in a list or tuple is always 1 less than the total number of data values inside it because the index starts at 0. Okay, now we're going to talk about lists. So lists can be changed once you've already defined it initially, and instead of using parentheses, they use square brackets. And the way they're defined is exactly the same as tuples. So you type the name of the list and then use a square bracket, and then you type in your data values. And the index system is also exactly the same. So it starts at 0, then it goes to 1, then it goes to 2, and so on. So you can print out a list just like a tuple, and it will print this out, including the square brackets. And just like a tuple, you can also retrieve a specific item by using square brackets and the index. So in this case, list 1 would be hello because hello is at the first index. So it prints hello here. And list 0, you can also replace the values inside a list, which you can't do as a tuple. So for example, if you type in list 0, this essentially represents the first item in the list. If you set that equal to 3, it will change the first item in the list to 3. So before it was 2 hello 10, now it's 3 hello 10. Yeah. And also you can retrieve the size of the list by using the length function, just like a tuple. With lists, they're much more flexible than tuples. Like you can manipulate them more. For example, you can get subsections of lists. So you can separate lists into certain parts that you want, specific parts. The syntax for this is by using the square brackets, and in the place of the indices, you would use a colon in between two indices. So for example, where it says print list 1 to 4, this will print the list starting from index 1 and up to, but not including index 4. And you have to remember that the indexes are separated by a colon. So in this case, this will print out 2, 3, 4, because index 1 starts here, and that corresponds to the value 2, and then it goes to index 2, which is value 3, index 3, which is value 4, and then at index 4 it stops. It doesn't include that, so it'll print out 2, 3, 4. If we run this, okay. So if you run this, you can see it prints out 2, 3, 4 because of this. With indexes in list and tuples, you can also use negative numbers, and those will count from the end of the list back to the beginning. So if you print out something like list 3:(-1, this will go from the third index here to the negative first index, which is basically the last index. So that will print 4, 5, and then not the last index. If you have a start point after the end point, it will print nothing. It will just print an empty list. So if you try to print something like 5 to 2, which would be like backwards instead of 2 to 5, you won't get a result. Leaving one side of the colon empty will just start from the beginning or the end of the list. For example, printing list blank colon 5 will just print from the beginning up to, but not including the 5th index. So that would be this. Yeah, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Same thing with leaving it blank on the other side. If you print list 2:blank, it will start printing at the second index, which is 3, and then it'll keep going to the end of the list. Obviously, if you just print list, it will print the entire thing, and if you print list with a colon with blanks on either side, it will print the entire list as well. Okay, does everyone understand like the basics behind list and tuples right now, or does anyone have any questions? Okay. Next, we're going to talk about manipulating lists. And this applies to lists only because tuples can't really be manipulated after they're defined initially. So we're going to have the example list here, 1, 2, 3. So the first function we're going to talk about is the append function. And the way to call all of these list manipulating functions is you type the name of the list, which is like the object, and then you type a dot, a period, and then you type the function. So this tells Python that you're trying to apply this function to that specific list. So the first function is append, which just adds a specific value to the end of the list. So right now our list is 1, 2, 3. If we call list.append parentheses 4, this will add 4th end of the list. So you can see our list is now 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, next we have the function extend. So we have a second list defined, 1, 2, 3. Our current list is 1, 2, 3, 4 because of our previous append function. And if we call list.extend epic, our new list is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So all this does is it basically adds another list to the end of the first list. So extend epic will add epic, which is 1, 2, 3, to the end of list, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. So we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Next, we have the insert function, which inserts a specific value at a specific index. So the syntax for this function, or at least the parameters for this function, are index comma element. So you start by typing the index, and then you type the specific piece of data you want to add to the list. So insert 6 comma 2 will add a value of 2 to the 6 index. So right now, the 6 number would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 would be here. So it doesn't replace a value, but it adds one. So now we have an extra 2 here. And then the last value just get pushed back. The next function is a remove function, which will remove the first matching element from a list, starting from the beginning to go into the end. So if we run this on our current list, which is this, it's going to check this, and then once it sees the target value, which is 3, it's going to remove this, and then it's going to stop. So if we print this, you can see it becomes, before it was 1, 2, 3, 4, it goes to 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3. So it completely removed this 3. And note that it does not remove all the values of the target. It only removes the first one it comes across. So this last 3 is still in the list. Next, we have a pop function, which removes the element from that index entirely. So if you run list.pop0, this will just delete the first data value inside the list, and it'll shorten the list. So when you run this and we print it out, you can see the 1 here is deleted, so it just becomes 2, 4, 1, 2, 2, 3. If there's no parameter put in here, if there's no index put in here in the parentheses, the program will just remove the last element of the list. So here it removes the 3, and it becomes this. This is our current list. Next function is the count function, which will just return an integer of how many times a specific element or data value appears inside of a list. So if we run count2, it'll return 3 because currently there's 3 2s inside of the list. Yeah. The last 2 functions are pretty self-explanatory. List.sort will sort it into increasing order. List.reverse will sort it into decreasing order, and list.clear will clear the list and return an empty list. Okay. We're gonna work on this practice exercise now. So I'll give you guys like 10 minutes. Yeah, I'll give you guys 10 minutes. It's a little bit harder, so I'll give you 10 minutes to work on this, and then I'll go over the solutions after that. So let me know if you have any questions. And yeah.
I don't really understand the first question.
Okay, so the first question says, given 2 lists, manipulate the arrays so that x equals 5, 4, 3 and y equals 3, 2, 1. Oh, sorry. Okay, so sorry. The given 2 list should be, let me check real quick. Sorry. This should say y equals 3, 4, 5. No. It's flipped. This is x, this is y. Okay. So it's asking you to manipulate these 2 lists so that they become these 2.
So the last digit and the first digit, they swap places?
Yeah, that's one way to do it, but you have to figure out how to do it. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go over the solutions now. Okay, so first we're gonna start by defining a third list called, which I call Z, and set it equal to our list X. And then wait a minute. Okay, this was like this. Okay, so we have to swap the lists and then you reverse them. That's the solution to the first practice problem. The second one is okay. First, you would sort the list. So you sort it in increasing order first, and then you reverse the list. Okay, yeah, this is the correct solution. Okay, next, we're going to talk about using arrays, which are list and tuples with conditionals and loops. So here we have the example list X, which is 1, 2, 3. And then we have a variable some value set to 2. We can use the if statement and say if some value, which is 2, in X, using the keyword in X, we'll print some value, comma, is in the array X. And else, if it's not, then print some value is not in the array X. So this in keyword is important because it allows you to find certain values in arrays. If you run this, you can see it says 2 is in the array X because 2, some value is in X. And yeah, if we change some value to something like 4, it will print 4 is not in the array X because it's not in 1, 2, 3. Here's a quick practice exercise. It'll be us like maybe 1 or 2 minutes to do this. Give them the list and some value. If the value is not in the list, add it to the list. Well, okay, I'll define the list. X equals 1. Okay, I'm gonna work on the solution now. So we have the list 1, 2, 3 here, and then first we need to define a variable which will be the value that we're checking for. So I'll just set this like y. I'll say y equals 4, and we have to use the if statement. So we type if y not in X, then X dot append. I think that's it, yeah. So run this. Print X. We know that 4 is not inside of 1, 2, 3 currently. So it appends y to the end of the list X, and our new list is 1, 2, 3, 4. key thing here is using a not keyword, which will also be very helpful in manipulating the list. If we change this to something like 3, it's not going to add anything because 3 is already in this list. So this is going to return false, and we're just going to have the same list. Okay, next we're going to talk about using for loops with lists. So obviously for loops are a new kind of loop that are used to do similar things to multiple different variables. So here we have an example of what you have to do if you're not using a for loop. If you want to print something on if you want to print a new word or phrase on a new line every time, you have to use 5 different print statements here. But using a for loop, we can just use it. We can just run this using several lines of code. So we can have a list with all the words we want to print out on each separate line. So we have hello, my name is Jimmy, Alan, Anakin. And then we have a for loop, and it says for x in words, print x. So the syntax is behind this format of using a for loop is you type for, and then you type a new variable. You're basically defining a new variable, and then use the keyword in, and you type in the name of the list. So this will cycle through every single data type inside, every single data value inside of a list, and assign that equal to x, which is a temporary variable, and then you can manipulate x inside of the for loop. So here we're just printing out x, so it's going to print out every single data value inside the list on a new line. Okay, you can also use loops, this time we're using a while loop, to remove all occurrences of a number in an array. So because we have the remove function already built into Python, which will remove the first instance of a element in an array, we can just use a loop with this to remove all instances of that element. So if we type while 1 in list, so while the element 1 is still inside our list, we could just run list.remove1, which will remove the first value of the element, the first occurrence of the element, and then this will keep going until it removes all the ones inside this list. And then at that point, it'll exit the while loop, and then we'll print out a list, which will now become 2, 3, 2, 3, 4. Another keyword in using conditionals, loops, is the break keyword, which I used previously in one of the challenge solutions. So break will just exit completely out of a chain of loops or if statements once it runs that. So the example here, we have a list numbers defined as 4, 8, 16, 2, 7, 14. And we have a for loop for x in numbers if x modulo 2 does not equal 0. So if the value is not even, then it will leave the loop. If the value is even, if this is false, then it will not run this, and it'll just print out x. So this will basically go through this list and print everything out until it reaches an odd number. So you can see it prints out 4, 8, 16, 2, and once it reaches 7, it exits. Another keyword is continue. So the continue keyword will go on to the next term in the for loop. It's basically kind of like a pass keyword. So our list numbers is the same, 4, 8, 16, 7, 2, 14. And for x in numbers, if x modulo 2 does not equal 0, so if it's not even, then we'll continue and we'll print x. So for the odd number 7, it basically skips the next term, 14, without doing the print x. So this will print everything except for the odd number. Yeah. Okay. We have another practice exercise here. The first one is similar to what we just did. Find the number of even numbers in the list. And here's the list. And the second one is given the list, find the number of 2-digit numbers in the list. And here's the list.
What are the numbers in the list?
For which practice exercise?
The first one.
Numbers are 1, 2, 99, 24, 45, and 76. Okay, I'm gonna go over the solutions to the practice exercises now. So both of these problems have pretty simple solutions. So for the first one, you want to find the number of even numbers on the list. And so immediately you know that you're gonna need a count variable. So I'm gonna make count variable set equal to 0. And then next I'm just gonna make the for loop to loop through our list for x in this. If x equal to equals 0, and so first we have our count variable set to 0, and then we loop through each item in the list, and if that item is divisible by 2, then it's even. So we increment count by 1, and then once we're done going through the entire list, we print out count 1. And then that will give us the total number of even numbers inside the list, which is 3. Okay, the next exercise is pretty similar as well. So you're gonna need a count variable because we're trying to find the number of 2-digit numbers in the list. So we set count equals 0, and then we can go into our for loop. So I use for variable I in x. If the number is greater than or equal to 10, and it's less than 100, we can increment count by 1, then we can print. Okay, so how this works is we have our count variable starting at 0, and we're going to loop through each item in the list. And if that number is greater than or equal to 10 and less than 100, then we'll increment number, because these are the requirements for a number to be a 2-digit number, because otherwise it'll be a 1-digit number or a 3-digit number or more. So we know that all numbers between 10 and 100 are 2 digits. So that's why I chose that for the conditions, and then the result is 2. Okay, next we're going to talk about a different way that you can run a for loop, and this is using the range function. So the range function with parameter n gives all the numbers from 0 to n minus 1. So for example here, if we run for z, the variable z in range 21, this essentially will have z go through all the values between 0 and 20. So if we print z every time, it will print 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 20. So it's not including the actual parameter, but it goes up to the parameter minus 1. To get 1 to n, you add 1 to each term. So for number in range 20, we can print number plus 1. This will go from 1 to 29. If we don't do number plus 1, it will print 0 to 19. See? The range function doesn't necessarily start at 0, and you can also put 2 parameters into it. So if you run the function range m comma n, this will basically create a list of every number from n to n minus 1. So for number in range 17 to 16, and we print the number, this will return nothing, because the first parameter is greater than the second. So there's no numbers between these. We can use this to do more advanced math functions such as a factorial. So in case you don't know, factorial is basically every number starting from 1 multiplied with the next consecutive number until you reach the target value. So factorial 6 is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6, which is equal to 720. So to do this, we can have a result variable, which will be like the total multiplied value, and we use a for loop for number in range 1 to 7. This will go from 1 to 6 actually, because it doesn't include the last value. And if we multiply result by number and we print the result at the end of it, you can see how it goes to 1. 1 times 1, and then 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times 4 is 24. 4 times 5 is 24 times 5 is 120, and 120 times 6 is 720. It's also important to note that it's not necessary to have different actions with the for loop variable you choose. So if I have this for number in range 50, this basically creates a loop that will run 50 times, but I don't have to use the number variable in this inside of the for loop. I can just print hello and this will print 50 times. Okay, there's another practice exercise. I'm gonna give you guys like 2 minutes to do this. Print the first 10 squares using a for loop. So the first 10 squares are using like these. It should be a 4. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100. All right, we don't have much time left, so I'm gonna go over the solution. It's very simple. We need a single for loop. So we're gonna do for x in range 1, 11, because this will go from 1 to 10. And then you can just print x times x. This will print 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, and so on. Okay. For loops are also useful for creating lists. So instead of, if you want to create like a massive list going from 1 to 100, instead of individually typing that out, you can define an empty list and then using a for loop for x in range 100. So this will go from 0 to 99. List dot append x plus 1. So that will add 1 to 100. And look at this. Okay, we only have 3 minutes left. This is just more list manipulation that you can do to create lists. Okay, for the last like 3 minutes until the end of class, you guys should work on these 2 practice exercises. So find the second highest number in an inputted 5 numbers using list. So you have to program it so that you input 5 numbers yourself, or the user is asked to input 5 different numbers. And then the second exercise is write a program that will store the first 100 elements of the Fibonacci sequence in a list. In case you don't know, this is a sequence where every number is the sum of the 2 previous numbers, with the first 2 numbers being 0 and 1.
I have a shorter message for the for loop.
What do you mean by that?
I wrote for I in range 1 and 11, print I times I.
Yeah, for the previous exercise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that works. Okay, it's 6:30 now, so class is over. Does anyone have any last questions before you leave? Okay.
And also, can you share this link with me?
Yeah, sure. Let me. Okay. It's my copy. Okay, I'll share this with everyone in case you want to look at this and complete the practice exercises.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, does anyone have any other questions before I leave? Oh, it says you need access. Okay, sorry. Let me change this real quick. With the link. Okay. All right, I updated the permission, so you should be able to access it now. Okay. Yeah, that'll be it for this week. Thank you.